Hello, welcome everybody to this week's lecture. We're going to be talking about strategic evangelism and how to successfully reach your region with the gospel and the importance of evangelism as a facet of the local church. Um, Evangelism obviously takes place outside the local church, but if we want to have healthy local churches, it's absolutely necessary that we have a vibrant evangelistic program where there's not just a couple of people who are especially gifted, but the church as a body is approaching evangelism corporately. So let's go ahead and get into this. Obviously, as a precursor to successful evangelism, you need strong intercessory prayer. A church should have vibrant prayer meetings, corporate prayer meetings. For many of us, the way this looks is we don't have a weekly prayer meeting, we have a monthly all-night prayer meeting. In New Hampshire, we just started also a weekly prayer meeting for some of our leaders as well. It's in person at the church. But the bulk of our prayer meeting and our intercessory prayer is at a monthly all-night prayer meeting. But whatever your context, you need to have prayer, strong prayer culture, strong atmosphere of prayer in the church where we are praying for the lost to come to Christ. And we need to have individuals in the church, especially the leaders, with strong prayer lives. Okay, when this is happening, we want to pray not just general prayers, but we're targeting prayer for revival. We're targeting prayer for the souls of the people who we're evangelizing to get saved with as much specificity as possible. You know, Father, bring conviction to these people, bring repentance to these people, bring them to Christ, etc. Okay, so this is obviously going to be your first step in having a successful strategic evangelism campaign is having strong, focused intercession. And if you are evangelizing and you're not getting success, then the best thing to do is to probably evaluate the prayer life of the church and the prayer that's going into the evangelism. Okay, so as you're developing your outreaches, you want to ask yourself, what are the contextual needs for our city, state, town, wherever we are. So in San Diego, we did a lot of street outreach and homeless outreach in downtown San Diego. That was very successful. So that's what I was used to. And when I came to New Hampshire, um, we first were meeting in Salem, New Hampshire, which is a rural area, later Merrimack, and then Concord. And in Concord, there are some homeless people and there's some street outreaches. But for the first two places we were meeting, these were more rural / suburban areas um, where there really weren't any homeless people. And there's not bustling downtown marketplaces. There's Walmarts and stuff, but we had to reevaluate how we do evangelism for New Hampshire. And so we did things like canvassing and other sorts of outreaches. And so you can ask yourself, what is the religious profile of your region? And that's an important question. Is this a lukewarm Christian region? Is this kind of an atheistic and unbelieving region? Some of you may be going to majority Muslim countries or majority Hindu countries in the mission field. And that's going to color your approach to the culture and what you're trying to do to reach these people. For example, there's many evangelists in San Diego who are geared towards the culture of Southern California and the people there. And then they come and visit New Hampshire and they get very little success comparatively here in New Hampshire, and probably vice versa for people who would go from New England to Southern California. This is true of any point. So the first question you want to familiarize yourself is like, what is, when you're going and ask, saying, can I pray for you, or sharing the gospel with people, and they're saying, no, I am fill in the blank. I don't believe in God, or I'm a Muslim, or whatever. That will help color how you should approach the outreaches. What's the economic condition of your mission field? This is going to color the way you approach the outreach as well. Are you in a downtown slummy city where there's a lot of homeless people, a lot of addiction, and the housed people are also in kind of abject poverty? Are you going to a place where maybe the addiction or homelessness isn't as bad, but it's still a lot of poverty and suffering and broken families? Are you going to a region that is affluent and it's mostly middle and upper class people and they have are not as aware of the needs of the gospel that they have. Okay, and you want to gear your outreaches to reach those people, because if you use the same tactics you use on a homeless outreach while canvassing in an upper class neighborhood, you're probably not going to see very much success. Okay, and then of course there are cultural considerations. Um, an example, I'll go back to the San Diego, New Hampshire contrast. In San Diego, we had one evangelist I know who would go out and he would do rap on a microphone and chalk drawings at Ocean Beach for an outreach, and that was successful in drawing attention in San Diego. That would not be successful in New Hampshire or in many other states, but it was particularly geared towards that culture. So ask yourself, what is the culture here, and how can we gear an outreach to reach the people in a way that's effective? Paul said, "I became all things to all people so that I might win some." So you want to ask yourself, how can we do that in this context? Furthermore, we don't just want to ask what the general demographic of your city or region is. We want to ask, what kind of people in this city did God call us to minister to? Did the Lord call us to minister to college kids, or to the homeless, or to families, or what have you? And of course, your church, you want to reach everybody, but you need to have a targeted, this is the type of person who we're trying to reach primarily, and so we're going to gear our ministry efforts towards this person. And obviously, you may be geared towards maybe young, disillusioned, single people. Okay, but you'll still get old people, you'll still get families, you'll still get homeless people, but you want to be geared towards the specific group of people that God's called you to, right? So those are some considerations you want to ask in your contextual needs. And so with that, then you need to actually execute your outreaches and figure out what kind of outreaches do we want to do in our region. So obviously, tried and true is a homeless outreach. Homeless outreaches are easy places to practice evangelism, because homeless people usually know they need something. There's a lot of pain, sickness, there's a lot of demons, so it's very easy to practice healing and deliverance with homeless outreaches. And we're called to alleviate human suffering, independent of whether or not they accept Christ. Even when they don't accept Christ, we are called to give water to the thirsty, to clothe the naked, and we're supposed to alleviate human suffering as much as is in our power, and we're able to do that when we do homeless outreaches. Of course, the issue with homeless outreaches are homeless people usually have a very, very hard time transitioning from receiving ministry on the street to getting into a church and having a sense of stability. And I think for all of our churches to really have an effective homeless outreach from start to finish, we need to develop some of those later stage long-term programs and structures, like an addiction recovery program where we can actually house them and get them off the streets and provide them with work. To my knowledge, none of our missionaries or churches have that at this moment, but when we do try to get homeless people to church, it's not a bad thing. We do want them to come to church. They could be disruptive or bothersome to some more delicate congregants, but that's okay. We are not going to favor wealthier people over poor people, just like it says in James. So we should get them to church. We should try to help them, but usually it's very difficult to do that. So marketplace outreaches is another one. And this is where we're going into malls. Here you see Ben praying for someone here in the Mall of Manchester. And this is another very basic ministry opportunity. Malls are great. But even more common are Walmarts. You may not live in an area with a mall, but you probably have a Walmart nearby, and you can go into the Walmart and you can evangelize. Well, how do we evangelize in the Walmart without getting kicked out? Well, in my experience, if you just get a cart and put something in it that you actually are going to buy, and you just walk around with the cart and evangelize, you're fine. You never get kicked out. Sometimes in a mall, even when you do something like that, you do end up getting kicked out, but not in a Walmart. So go to a Walmart, go to other stores. Do this systematically. Something that we've been doing recently is asking the Holy Spirit, which stores should we go into this week? And he gives us answers, and we have divine appointments. So a marketplace outreach can be effective almost anywhere, but you think there's different kind of stores. you're going to reach different demographics in different stores. Target and Walmart are the exact same thing for different groups of people. Walmart and Target are targeting two different demographics. And so when you go into a Target or a Walmart, you will encounter two different demographics. And so which one of those demographics are we trying to reach this week or in general? A Home Depot will have a different demographic. Okay, same thing with grocery stores, and malls are going to have a different demographic. So those are some questions you want to ask when you're planning a marketplace outreach. Execute marketplace outreaches with wisdom. You have this isn't in the notes here, but a street outreach is kind of like halfway between homeless and marketplace. This is essentially it's a marketplace outreach, but it's in open air rather than in a store or a mall. This is when you're going on the street, but you're not targeting homeless people necessarily. You're going to maybe a main street, which is more bustling and more busy, or in New Hampshire, sometimes we'll go to Hampton Beach in the summer where there's a very busy environment. That's going to be very similar to a marketplace outreach, and we classify that as a marketplace outreach. However, it's going to have a little bit of a different vibe. And so when you see big events in your city or your area, those can be opportunities to execute a marketplace outreach. Now, something that we did not do in San Diego while I was there, but we do now in New Hampshire, is canvassing outreaches. And that's because New Hampshire has three pretty small cities and then the country and towns. And so we're really, if we just did homeless and marketplace outreaches, we would be reaching a very small demographic and small portion of our state. We need to canvass, and so that's when you walk down the street and you knock on doors. And if you canvass, I would say that you should do a few things. You should buy a canvassing map of your town. Start from near where your church meets and expand outward. That's the first thing you should have. And the second thing you should have is you should have a door hanger or a track with your church's information that you can leave, because about half of the doors you're going to knock on, no one's going to be home or no one's going to answer, but you want to leave something of the gospel there for them. Okay, so that can be a very powerful type of outreach. And I think it would behoove us as churches, if we're in a particular town or region, that we should canvass, every house in that town and try to get the gospel out as much as we can. Okay, the next is targeted charity. Now, this is essentially when you create a partnership with something like a nursing home, an addiction recovery center, a veterans home, something where there is a secular institution that's taking care of people, and you are coming in, preaching to them, praying for them, and doing that sort of thing. So that's a great opportunity for outreach. It takes a little bit more planning, but if you're in a region where that's an appropriate thing, you can go ahead and plan one of those. Then you have a university outreach, which this is if you live in a town or your church is in a town where there's a college. This is obviously a great idea. You just go on the campus where there's students walking around and you preach the gospel to them. Okay, and looking for community events, again, that's like marketplace outreach. And then finally, you can use crusades, revivalistic meetings, and those sorts of things to try to draw in unbelievers. I would say that this is a augment to outreach. Jesus said, go out into the highways and the byways and compel them to come in, not we're going to sit here and do a dog and pony show and try to get everyone to come in. So we should be primarily going out, but in an augment to that, you can advertise a revival event where you have an evangelistic type meeting and you can try to bring in unbelievers or Christians who aren't really born again in order to get them born again. Okay, we want to train our congregations, our churches, our missions, our teams to be evangelistic. Outreach is not just the activity of an evangelist or of missionaries or people who feel excited about it. It should be the activity of the whole church. And how we do this is, for one, elders and ministers need to preach on evangelism. They need to emphasize it in their preaching and teaching that this is important. And by not actively participating in evangelism, we are in dereliction of duty as Christians. Okay, and when people go out on the outreach, they will see miracles if they're trained to pray for miracles, and they should come and testify consistently in the church. This is the miracles I'm seeing. And really, I think testimonies should be highlighting outreach, evangelism, miracles more than just random things that are happening in people's lives. Okay. Whoever the leading minister is, if you're planting a church, that would be you. You need to be regularly involved in leading by example. Now, if you have a pastor of another church, and they're not, let's say you just have this church and there's a pastor there, and the pastor says, oh, you should go out and do outreach, but he does not go to the outreach. Nobody's going to go to the outreach. If the pastor goes out and leads by example, or the leading minister, whoever he is, goes out and leads by example, then that will teach the church to be involved in outreach, and they will go with more consistency. And of course, we want to practice healing and deliverance in the course of evangelism if we want it to be effective, especially in the West. Okay, finally, for strategic evangelism, when our churches get to the point where they are influencing the region, we want to think of building long-term kingdom establishments that will continue to bear fruit for generations. First and foremost, most importantly, is Christian education. If we are relying on public education, no matter how much preaching we do, no matter how good our revivals are, we're going to lose the next generation constantly. So we need to train up the next generation under Christian values and principles. And this includes anything from kindergarten all the way to master's and doctorate degrees. Now, not every one of us in our different ministries may be able to do that whole program, but we should start where we're able to, which is why we're doing this school, is we're starting to produce the equivalent of a undergraduate program to train people in the Bible, and in the future we're hoping to do that for other careers and fields as well. But for you, it may be a kindergarten or a preschool or an elementary school or whatever, but we want to build private Christian institutions that can educate our children. You could think, so let's say you have a church or your congregation. What are the people who are represented here? Do we have a lot of business people? Do we have a lot of people in the medical field? Do we have a lot of people in law? And how can we transform whatever that demographic is into kingdom businesses? Encouraging your people to find the career that they are called to and grow into it, and don't just do it with excellence, but do it with the kingdom in mind, and influence the region with a Christian culture. Okay. And then, of course, when a church is large and influential, how can they have an indirect positive influence on other churches? This isn't going around and telling other churches what to do, but as I explained in a different lecture, if you're training tons and tons of Fire Academy students, if you fill a city with 5,000 Fire Academy students, those Fire Academy alumni are going to influence their other churches, influence the region. That's an indirect positive influence on the churches, okay? And there's other examples like that. And of course, leveraging influence in politics. Again, I talked about this in a previous lecture. And then building generational wealth. And what I mean by this is we don't want to